Well, hello again, and welcome to our series going through Luke's Gospel. Today we are still in Luke chapter 5, going to read verses 27 to 32. If you want to follow along, if you have a Bible with you there at home. So, Luke 5, verses 27 to 32. After this, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector by the name of Levi sitting at his tax booth. "Follow me," Jesus said to him. And Levi got up, left everything, and followed him. Then Levi held a great banquet for Jesus at his house, and a large crowd of tax collectors and others were eating with them. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law who belonged to their sect complained to his disciples, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" Jesus answered them, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but those who are ill. I've not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." Well, what do we make of this particular encounter between Jesus and Levi, or Jesus and Matthew? Because this tax collector is actually Matthew, probably the writer of Matthew's Gospel. You can have a look for the same story in Matthew chapter 9. So Jesus on the road, and these tax booths were a common sight in towns where tax collectors would sit and collect taxes for those that came past, customs duties on goods. So these tax collectors at the time were hated. They were social outcasts. I mean, today probably no one likes tax collectors, but at that time they were particularly hated because they were collaborators with the Romans. The Romans, the occupying force that were occupying the land. And so tax collectors worked with the Romans, gave some of their taxes to the Romans, pinched as much as they could for themselves. And so they were generally despised and hated. But Jesus calls this particular tax collector, Matthew or Levi, to follow him, to become one of his disciples. And look at the way Levi responds. He doesn't think, well, I'll think it over. Let me go away and mull over it for a few days and I'll be back to you. No, immediately he got up, left everything and followed him. Now, for a tax collector to leave everything was a big thing. Leaving behind those years of training, the years of taking bribes to get the position. It was not a small thing to leave everything behind. And obviously he was leaving the whole of his old life, if you like, to follow Jesus. So it was fully committed discipleship here. Perhaps Levi was amazed by the fact that Jesus would think of someone like him to be a disciple. He thought he was too bad to be a disciple of Jesus, too bad to be rescued by Jesus. But no one is beyond the reach of the grace of God. And so Matthew leaves everything and follows Jesus. And then he holds a banquet. From being a tax collector to being a generous man, inviting others to come and eat at his house. A large crowd with Jesus and his disciples. And just as you think everything seems to be going well, you've got the party poopers, the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, who start to complain. Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? See, what the Pharisees, the religious teachers of the time, seemed to think was that if you ate and drank with sinners, you'd become polluted by them. You know, they used to think that if you share a table fellowship, you eat and drink from the same table, you become polluted by sinners. And so a tax collector would pollute them because a tax collector was evil and wicked. So that's what they try to suggest to Jesus and disciples. You shouldn't be eating with those polluters. You'll be polluted by their sin. But we need to recognize a few things here to understand this. Well, first of all, we need to recognize that everyone's a sinner. So if everybody's a sinner, that means everybody is a potential polluter, apart from obviously Jesus himself, who was sinless. Everybody's a sinner. Even the Pharisees were sinners, but they didn't recognize that fact. And yes, God taught in the Old Testament for his people to be separate from the nations around, to live different lives, to eat different foods, to wear different clothes. But Jesus has come to abolish those distinctions because the gospel is for everybody. And so Jesus eats and drinks with his disciples and those tax collectors, past, tax collectors like Matthew, but probably also others who were still tax collectors at the time. So Jesus isn't polluted by sin, doesn't encourage others to do the same. He doesn't encourage his disciples to do the same. And notice his answer, verse 31 and 32. It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but those who are ill. I've not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Can you see here what the biggest barrier for the Pharisees coming to Jesus was? It was their own righteousness, their own pride, if you like, in the fact that they were holy, they were good, they were unpolluted. They didn't need the doctor. I'm sure we all know of somebody, perhaps family or friends, who is the person who always refuses to go to the doctor when they're ill. That it's that pride. There's nothing wrong with me. And this is, spiritually speaking, the Pharisees. They didn't think there was anything wrong with them. They were righteous. They were right in God's sight. They were the good guys. Why should we need repentance? But Jesus says, I have come for those who are ill. Obviously, spiritually speaking here. He's not just come for the physically ill, he's come for the spiritually ill. And so it takes humility to say to Jesus, I need you. Spiritually, I'm sick. I need your assistance. You are the rescuer that I need. So the biggest barrier to the gospel, the biggest barrier to becoming a Christian is actually pride. And C.S. Lewis, the famous writer, identifies this in his book, Mere Christianity, the pride of being the big barrier, the greatest sin. And so don't let your pride stop you going for help to Jesus. He is the one who's come to cure our spiritual ills. He is the physician of the soul, as it were. There's an interesting school of thought today that says that as Christians we should be sort of eating and drinking with the the tax collectors and the sinners of the day, the outcasts. We should be where the outcasts are today, just like Jesus. But that's actually the wrong application of the passage, because who are we in the story? We have to recognize who we are in the story. We're not Jesus in the story. We are the tax collectors. We are the sinners. We are the outcasts ourselves, who Jesus invites us to eat and drink with him, to dine literally on him. In John chapter 6, Jesus says, I am the bread of life. So let's not identify ourselves wrongly in the story. We are the outcasts, if you like. We are the tax collectors. We are those that have collaborated with the forces who are in rebellion against God. We are the people that need a doctor ourselves. We need Jesus to be the physician of our souls. Well, this passage is going to go on to talk about some of the trickiest bits actually in the New Testament. So I hope you'll tune in again next time when we look at the rest of the chapter 5 of Luke's Gospel. So I hope to see you then.